So MAP is a nonprofit organization that focuses on food sustainability and food security within our area of the world. We do that through youth employment, a mobile market, and urban farming. Really, to go back, the history of Massachusetts Avenue Project started out of the necessity of an abundance of youth without any jobs locally for them to have. So a lot of teens loitering around with nothing better to do than get into trouble. An abundance of vacant land popping up all over the city with houses being torn down because they were falling apart. And then also because the last grocery store was closing down and the west side was quickly becoming a food desert, which means there wasn't a store within a mile for folks to get fresh fruits and vegetables. We have 12 pieces of property on the west side of Buffalo that we have been actively farming for the last 20 years. 9 of those sites are located almost in a T shape on Massachusetts Avenue. So, on our mobile market side of things at MAP, we, serve about 3,500 to 4,000 customers a week. They can pay in any format and they're getting affordable food. And then on our youth employment side, we have a track record of 100% high school graduation rate. And as of the last few years, 100% of our teens go on to college. We had been working in a building across the street from that, and that burned down about 8 years ago due to arson. So the city thankfully saved us and put us in the back of this old library on Grant Street. The last 7 years they started dreaming about a new farmhouse, and the past 5 years they started the capital campaign. So we're near completion on our site on Mass Ave of a 11,000 square foot new farmhouse. The dream right now for that community component, and we're working on looking at similar organizations around the world who have this kind of space and what their best practices are, so we can have folks from the Cornell Cooperative Extension come in and talk about knife safety or nutrition education, or we can have local people from the community come and teach how to make their favorite Burmese dish or their favorite Puerto Rican dish. We can really invite all these local leaders that are in the neighborhood to get together and to do these kind of activities for little to no money. The most exciting thing for us about this new farmhouse is that the basement is 3,000 square feet of cold and dry storage. So instead of 3 residential refrigerators, Danielle and the market will have 450 square feet of cold storage that's 45 degrees, and then a walk-in cooler that's refrigerator temperature. But now we're really going to be able to open up what we can do with the community and hopefully get some more farm-to-table stuff involved. Once we move in there, the sky's the limit on what we can do. We're trying not to go crazy and just continue programming as usual for next year to see how being in this new enormous facility, what that means to us. But I really think telling the story of what we do is going to be a lot easier, a little bit more glamorous, and also people can walk out of the office and just be right on the farm immediately. So having NOFA reach out to MAP was such an amazing opportunity for us to continue to tell our story. We were able to bring in a group of panelists for the discussion that we felt would really add to the conversation, especially on that urban farming level that isn't often brought up in the world these days, because so many things are on that bigger farming level, and there's such a huge urban farm movement going on, especially with bringing in our young people and employing them and teaching them how to do things, whether they're going to be a farmer or whether they're going to be a marketer for some huge food corporation one day. It's all part of the food system, and I think that's the most exciting part about it.
In 1980, 2 families were trying to decide what they wanted to make, and the options were limited. This is the Hispanic household and this is the Kenyan household. Here's what happened.
We need food, but I need to take care of the kids. Go to the corner store and get some food for dinner.
Well, what do you want me to get?
Try to find something to make a meal, maybe some plantains.
Okay.
Meanwhile, in the Kenyan household.
Hey, I need you to go pick up some food for us from the corner store.
What do you want me to get?
Green string beans.
How you doing? I'm good for you. Oh, okay.
How can I help you?
I need some green beans.
I need some plantains.
Sheesh. I don't think you guys are gonna find that over here.
You got something similar?
I have plantain chips and Cheetos for you.
That's
Is
fine,
that-
I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, let me go get it. Here you go. Bye. Have a nice day.
You too.
The kids bring the food back to their mothers.
Are you kidding me?
Are you serious? Time work! Now it's 2018 and they're trying to make meals again.
We need food. Go to the mobile market and get some food for dinner.
What do you want me to get?
Try to find something to make a meal. Maybe some plantains.
Again? Okay. Oh, meanwhile, in the Kenyan household.
Hey, I need you to go to the mobile market and get some food for us.
What do you want me to get?
Green string beans.
There you go. Again. Lion plantain. What do you want? Hey, you guys go. Mobile market.
Welcome to the mobile market. Good to see you again.
We have organic fruits and vegetables and they're local sustainable.
I need some green beans.
I need some plantains.
They are $2 each.
I only have food stamps. Is that okay?
Definitely, we take food stamps from the mobile market.
I only have Wix. Can y'all take Wix checks?
Definitely, we take WIC too.
Here's your plantain and your green string beans. Thank you for coming. Thank you.
Everyone needs access to healthy, affordable, culturally significant foods. Food justice for all.
I want this panel to really be conversational, so I am going to ask them some questions to answer, but after I ask a few questions, if you guys have questions, I'd love for it to become a conversation. So, so who do we have on this fabulous panel? Sylvia Kelly is from the Food Systems Planning and Healthy Communities Lab, aka the Food Lab at UB. Alexander Wright is he's the founder of the African Heritage Co-op here in Buffalo. Dakota Parker, who's sitting next to him, is one of our Growing Green youth and also has been a mobile market specialist this summer. Elsie Berger is the Agency and Community Programs Manager at the Food Bank of Western New York. Jess Gilbert is a research associate at the Partnership for Public Good. Elizabeth Henderson has many, many hats. She is a founder of Peacework Farm. She works with NOFA. She's done a million things, so I'm not sure which organization to put you with. And she's also really a champion and an incredible elder and leader in the CSA and food justice movement. So we're very excited to have her here. And Rebecca Williams, who works for MAP. With that very brief introduction, we can start with you, Sylvia, and if we just want to go down the line and just talk a little bit about who you are and what your organization does.
All right. So I am a grad student in UB's Master of Urban Planning program with a specialty in food systems, and I also work as a researcher at the UB Food Lab. At the Food Lab, we believe that everyone deserves and should have access to healthy, affordable, and culturally preferred foods.
Sure. So Elise Berger, I'm at the Food Bank of Western New York, and I oversee the programs that we do. So a lot of people think of the food bank as being, a network of food pantries, which we are, but we also offer a lot of nutrition and cooking education, and along with our Food for Kids initiative, we work a lot with the schools as well. So I oversee kind of the programs that we do at the food bank.
I'm Elizabeth Henderson. I've been an organic farmer since 1979. My farm has been certified organic since 1985, and our farm was one of the first community-supported agriculture projects in the country, second or third in New York State. And doing community-supported agriculture for me was a choice because it is very hard for farms to actually make a living in this country for a family-scale farm. There's been a farm crisis that's been going on throughout my entire life. The year I was born, there were over 5 million farms in this country. Now there are about 2 million, and we continue to lose farms steadily. Farms don't pay people enough to cover their costs of production, and farmers pay their workers the least that they can because the farms themselves, for the most part, can't afford to pay more. So our food system is in a really serious crisis, and that's the part of food justice that I have addressed in my work, representing NOFA on the creation of the Agricultural Justice Project, which does food justice certification and does a lot of work in helping farms organize themselves so that they can get the best price that they can, so that they can pay living wages to the farmers and to the people who work on the farms.
All right, as she said, I'm Jessica Gilbert. I work at Partnership for the Public Good, where I am working to bring the Good Food Purchasing Program to Buffalo Public Schools. So this program focuses on procurement and using school food procurement to emphasize local economies, nutrition, environmental sustainability, animal welfare, and labor welfare. And then my other hat is also, I'm a PhD candidate at UB in the geography department, where I use food to kind of study the intersection between social and environmental justice.
I'm Dakota Parker, and I work at MAP, which stands for Massachusetts Avenue Project. And MAP is basically a nonprofit organization, and we bring in youth, we work with youth, we have a farm, a garden, we harvest, and we work through the school year too. And this year I've been a mobile market specialist. I've been in this for 2 years already, and what the mobile market does, it goes around to different locations where healthy, fresh, affordable food is very, very limited, and our prices are very low so people could afford them. And we just go to locations that don't really have any healthy or fresh foods in stores.
My name is Alex Wright, founder of the African Heritage Food Co-op. I'm from East Buffalo, and I just noticed that there wasn't healthy food. There's a higher rate of diabetes, hypertension, and a higher rate of unemployment. And we felt the best way to solve that was with a food co-op. So we do mobile markets to a lot of different places that are quote unquote food deserts. And I'm sure we'll talk about that as we go on. We're trying to establish community-owned grocery stores in East Buffalo and in northern Niagara Falls.
So my name is Rebecca Williams. I am currently the campaign organizer for Massachusetts Avenue Project, building a coalition of community partners and organizations from throughout Western New York together to bring the Good Food Purchasing Program, which is this national program, to our area institutions. So just a little bit, I am a Buffalo girl. I grew up here in Buffalo, went to the public schools, and as a young person myself, got into organizing, which was transformative for me. So prior to serving as MAP's community organizer, I was a youth education director for Massachusetts Avenue Project for 5 years, and gained so much from working with the young people and hearing their perspectives and supporting them and having leadership roles in the community. I guess I would just add to that in the Good Food Purchasing Program, beyond kind of leveraging coalition partnerships for collective action to bringing this national program to our institutions, we've also really been kind of looking at one of the first priorities of the coalition was supporting communities of color, minority-owned entrepreneurship, et cetera. And we're, I guess personally, this is kind of in line with a new direction, which for the past year I've been one of 10 in a cohort on the Heal Food Alliance, which is a national organization that trains folks in HEAL, stands for health, environment, agriculture, and labor. So those four things in relationship to food systems work. And they have a strong focus on a racial analysis. And being a multiracial, mixed black and white youth growing up in the fourth most segregated city in the country, I've learned how that's given me a very unique perspective in terms of trying to wrap my head around race issues. And being part of the national conversation about race and racial analysis, in particular with our food system, has been really powerful. And I'm looking forward to bringing some of that work into the Good Food Purchasing Program and into other work that we're doing here locally.
Great, thanks. So this is a food justice panel, and we use that term food justice all the time, but it can mean different things to different people. So I'm going to pose the question, what does food justice mean to all of you? And we don't have to go in order, but if anyone wants to take a crack at that. And
Can I
Dakota.
Okay. For me, personally, I think that food justice means that people could afford cheap, healthy food, because usually food is expensive, and food justice, getting food close by, just walking and just have the corner store right there. Not corner store, just healthy store. Because corner stores don't really have healthy foods in it. Yeah.
Well, I would like to add to that food justice has to mean that all of the people who work in food, the people who grow it, pack it, ship it, are all paid living wages, so that they can afford to buy good food themselves out of their own wages and don't depend on nutrition programs. So you don't have stores like Walmart who half their employees are on SNAP. And Walmart gives special scholarships to food banks to train people to access SNAP, rather than Walmart spending its money raising the wages of the people who work for Walmart.
I think jumping off of that, to me, food justice also means that not only can people have access to and afford good, healthy food, and not only can the people who work in the food system get paid a living and thriving, even I'd say, wage, a fair wage, a just wage, so that they themselves aren't on food stamps. I think it means that communities need to have a voice and need to have a say in the food system. We need to see government policies that are investing in our food systems and investing in our communities. And we also need to have communities be able to have a voice and a participatory role in those policies.
And I would just take that a step further. Definitely we need voice, definitely need action, but I would say ownership. Our model is anything less than ownership is unacceptable, and I say that wherever I go. So you have the whole circle, right? So the farmers are doing their thing, they're getting paid a living wage. The food is a low cost to the people, but the money that you do put in that food goes back into your community in employment, in ownership, and in stuff like that. So I think food justice closes that loop, because if you don't close that loop at any time, you could lose it. You can lose access at any time if there's no ownership.
I don't feel like there's anything. I've been just listening to everybody else because I feel like folks have touched on it. I think just echoing that, like, I am a strong believer in making sure that folks who are most commonly not at the table are in a leadership position where they are moving kind of the needle on things in terms of our local policies. I would just add, though, just having been involved in some of that work, just being frustrated with kind of like the constant, like, even when you have folks at the table, unfortunately, there's still being disconnects. And so food justice, I think I guess I would feel like it's a pretty deep, a deep challenge, just in that, I mean, justice on any level is really digging down deep to figure out where are the inconsistencies with what we're talking about. And even if you have folks of color or low-income folks on a council making policy decisions, if they're not participating in the decisions, or if they are not in, like, part of the in crowd and, you know, understanding the acronyms, or you know, don't usually hang out with the same people, and so just aren't part of the council, they're less likely to participate. And I feel like too often that is happening. So I feel like food justice on a deep level is really, you know, looking at the inconsistencies and disconnects in terms of people really participating.
I'd also add an intergenerational component to food justice. I think that so much of us, of our current food system, focuses on producing enough for the here and now at the expense of the resources that we need to produce equitable food for the future generations as well. And that's kind of where the social justice and the environmental justice kind of come together, because we need food justice now, but we need food justice to be able to continue into the future and not just be a present thing, but to be a continuous thing as well.
Coming to me because I haven't talked yet. So I would say, on a food bank's perspective, you know, we always say that our best day at the food bank will be the day that we go out of business and that we're not, you know, something that is necessary in our community. And I would say that everything that this panel has already talked about would contribute to me not having a job anymore, and I would love to have that day happen. So, you know, we say too, you know, that the first line of defense against hunger is the SNAP program. But again, with that food justice and social justice, and again, everything that this panel has been talking about, that's really what we need to focus on first, as opposed to, you know, the reactive the reactive mentality that we have against hunger and inequality in our country.
There's a problem with one of the words that people have used about the food that's desirable, which is cheap. We have a cheap food system that guarantees that food will be relatively affordable for most people. But you get what you pay for. The quality is very, very poor of most of the food, even if it's cheap. And it's destroying our environment, the way it's produced. It's destroying the farms, the network of family farms that used to produce enough food for everybody. So I think we need to question a food system that's based on the profit motive and think about redesigning it completely on cooperative basis and community basis rather than for profit.
I guess what comes to mind when you bring that up, Elizabeth, is just the commodities program on the federal level, and just kind of having an awareness of how much our federal government and the policies that have gone on in terms of like commodity crops and why our food is cheap. You know, why is food that, you know, that our folks can access in the corner stores, how come it's cheap? Because there's subsidies that are paid to big agriculture to produce those commodity crops, right? So is there ways that we can, on a federal level, make sure that everybody has access to healthy, affordable food? And yes, I understand why you would push back on the word cheap, because we see things like, farms where they're spraying pesticides on families while they're out in the fields just to boost sales, or not letting their farm workers earn a living wage, or not even a minimum wage, right? So that's why we're pushing back against cheap. But being a city resident, having relied on food stamps, knowing that, if I was privileged enough to be able to volunteer at my CSA with my local farmer, so I got, part of my food donated to me because I worked at the farm stand. But not everybody has those connections, and not everybody has the time to do that, or are working several jobs to be able to provide a home. So how can we on a federal level, so food justice would have to be, if we're really doing what you're talking about, it would have to be broad. It would have to be federal.
I think connecting back to that, food justice, we need to think about it as a system and not as siloed issues like access, healthy food, that sort of thing, a local level versus a state level. It's all connected. And I think thinking about the food system, that's what we hear so much, is the food system. And we actually have to think about it as a system that impacts each other, and different things create feedbacks and all that sort of stuff. So the food system is called that for a reason. And like you said, everything is tied in, and we need to think about all the different components.
Wow, that's been some really good discussion. So I'm going to skip to one more question, and then I'm going to open it up if you guys have questions or comments. So if you guys could talk about one thing or two things in the next year that you'll be working on to improve equity in the food system, something that you're really excited about in your work. In the next year. I'm putting limits on it. So.
Now I would ask that you all speak up.
Oh,
Okay.
one thing, huh? Sheesh.
Yeah.
Or two things.
Somebody else could take it over.
I'm trying not to. Well, I guess I could start. In the next year, we plan to have 2 stores open, which will be hiring people within walking distance of the store, and not worrying about your past, if you have a criminal past, or if we want to focus on people trying to change their lives. We want to focus on some single parents and who may have not had opportunities. We want to focus on some veterans that society has tried to throw away. We want to bring them back and let them know that they matter. So I think that through that, we want to make things a little more equitable, as well as in the next year. So I guess this will be my second thing, as well as keeping it, kind of doing this balancing of inexpensive, I won't say cheap, we'll say inexpensive, so that everyone can afford a higher quality of food, and hopefully therein reducing a lot of the health issues. So we're talking economic boosting, employment boosting, and health boosting. Hopefully, if I don't get hit by a bus, and even if I do, hopefully it all works out and people can pick it up and keep going. There you go.
There's the spirit.
Well, what I'm working on over this next year that I'm very excited about is a project that's a joint project between NOFA, the Northeast Organic Farming Association, and all of the Northeast chapters. There are 7 state chapters, and the Agricultural Justice Project. And we're trying to get 50 farmers to fill out this self-assessment, which will help the farmers think about getting better pricing for their products and having improved labor policies on their farms. And any farm in the group that wants to have technical assistance so that they can improve their labor policies will be able to help them do that. And I've given this form out to a couple of the farmers in the room. If there are any other farmers who haven't had one of these, like Robert, you're a farmer, maybe you could fill it out. I would appreciate your doing it. It's a way of moving towards greater, enabling organic farmers who really have strong feelings for social justice to embody their beliefs in the work that they do on their farms, despite the difficulties of working within a cheap food system, which constantly presses down on the prices that people can get. Any other farmers? Okay.
So I would say on the food bank level, we are trying to make sure that we are shortening the line that we are serving at the same time. So empowering our clients to have employment and setting up a job training kind of program at the food bank as well. We have job opportunities at the food bank that run from warehousing to truck driving to in-office work, and we can train people on how to do those kinds of things as well. So we're really pushing towards that line. I feel like I keep giving out lines today, but to serve the line of individuals that come to us in need of food access and help with food, but also shortening that line because people may not need our services anymore.
So, my work in the food lab is focused on the global south. There's a lot going on with the food lab, but I'll speak to my projects because that's what I know best. I'm really excited for my work, focusing on building and strengthening our food systems across the global south in the coming year, and I'm especially excited to be focusing on building connections between our different partners across the global south in Jamaica, in Ghana, in India, in Kashmir, so that not only can we help facilitate conversations on a global level about how to strengthen our food systems, help our small farmers, help struggling farmers across the globe, but so that we can connect them and they can build their own partnerships and have that direct communication of information. Because these issues, they're affecting Buffalo, but they're affecting small farmers everywhere. These are global. These aren't just limited to the US. I know that extreme weather events are only going to get more common as we see climate change. And we need to think about the globalization of our food systems and the spreading urbanization of our cities. Small farmers in Buffalo, I know, are being affected by this kind of global pressure and this urban pressure in both direct and indirect ways, and I want to help build those connections between people on the ground and farmers on the ground across the world who are already doing this work. So that's what I'm excited about facilitating.
Okay. Next year I might work on the mill market, but me and my boss, Danielle, she's not here right now, but me and her, and we've been talking about having more locations to go to, because the ones that we had this year, they were very isolated, like in places that people would have never thought that we've been there. So maybe we could have more locations so people could, come and find out who we are, maybe.
Go ahead, it's over you.
It is over me. So I'm kind of at an exploratory point in my life, but one thing, I'd like to mention two things. The first is this challenge of the Good Food Purchasing Program and building a coalition of organizations that are putting their differences aside and coming together for their collective interest. So as Jess said, it's the Good Food Purchasing Program has 5 key values. And so my job has been to recruit coalition partners that can find an entry point in one of those 5 values. So the 5 value categories, again, are environmental sustainability, valued workforce, animal welfare, local economies, and nutrition. And around the country, when folks have organized their local good food purchasing coalitions, it's always included these 5 values. So locally, I've been making a lot of connections and talking to these different organizations. So just that challenge of bringing together, so when I go and talk to somebody, starting from where I'm coming from, as a Buffalo girl who got involved with organizing as a young person and feels strongly that the youth voice needs to be lifted up in school food choices. And so, and that's been awesome because, at MAP, we created these podcasts last summer where the youth who are employed at MAP created these radio podcasts, I don't know what else to call them, at the public library, where they got to say which of the 5 values were of most interest to them. And they put a jingle behind it, and that was super fun for me as the education director to do with them. But also then there was a lot of buzz around the country because other folks are not doing that kind of stuff in terms of engaging young folks in the way that we have here. So coming to those coalition partners in that way, saying, I'm doing this because I want to make sure that young folks are at the forefront when we start implementing this program in our schools, that they're saying what they want and what's important to them in this. And then those coalition partners can say, oh, well, I'm really interested in animal welfare, and I see that if you bring the good food purchasing program here, I can make sure the schools aren't buying from farms that are mistreating their animals, or I can make sure to purchase that the school district is purchasing from farms that are, paying their workers a livable wage. So that's been powerful for me, that the potential of collective action that is with this good food purchasing program. We just recently signed on the Buffalo Teacher Federation, the SPCA serving Erie County, the Area Labor Federation, and of course the next step is how do we work together to get this passed. So in the next year we should get the head of our food service department, which Jess has been our research partner, but I believe it was $13.7 million a year they spend on food, and $7 million something they spend on labor for the Buffalo Public Schools. So the very first step is this baseline assessment where the head of the food service department says, here are my vendors. They've all agreed to be assessed based on these 5 values, and they get benchmarked in terms of how they're doing. So that's really exciting for me to just get a baseline assessment to determine where our district is. So that is on that side. And then on another side, something completely unrelated to the good food purchasing program is this exploration of agriculture, land, and food, and race and culture, and really being curious, because having grown up in Buffalo, when I did a lot of door-to-door organizing in my youth, heard a lot from Black folks that when they hear about farming, they think about slave time, and that and first of all, I will say that I'm not hearing this around the country, and so it's been really beautiful to see in other areas, and also for some folks here locally, that it's not like that. So even though that might be an umbrella sentiment that I came across when I was in Buffalo, I'm finding that that's not the case elsewhere, and I've just been feeling really lifted up internally, seeing the way that some of these healing communities that are kind of led by Black and brown folks, like Soul Fire in New York State, or There was another community we visited down in North Carolina, the way that they're getting in touch with land in their own way and celebrating it with cultural diversity in those ways. And so excited about the possibility of bringing that here locally and getting together with other folks to figure out what it looks like when we connect with land and agriculture.
Okay, I guess I'll focus on the Good Food Purchasing Program because dissertations take much longer than a year and I'm struggling. I would have to say I am most excited about starting to explore the policy process. We are hoping that the Buffalo Public Schools Board of Education will adopt the Good Food Purchasing Program as policy in the coming years, 1.5 to 2 years, but I'm excited to start exploring that process and trying to figure out how we can start incorporating our values in Buffalo in terms of farmers and lifting up people of color, entrepreneurs and growers and that sort of thing, and incorporating those values into our policy. And in addition to emphasizing the 5 values that are already part of the policy. So that's one thing I'm really excited about. And then this may come as a huge shock, but as a student and as a research associate, I do a lot of research. So I am looking forward to finding more ways on how I can kind of use research to support these efforts and the information gathering and kind of just out talking to folks and creating things that really help us move along. So, yeah.
Great. All right. Well, I want to open it up. We have about 10 minutes left. If anyone wants to ask questions, yeah.
So I can get the mic here. So I just have a question for all the young farmers here. And I had a conversation with Katie about this, planning this event, is how do we enable all you young people to have access to land and take these skills that you're learning here at MAP and move on with your lives and find, if you want to be involved in the food system, how do we help you with that? I'm a privileged farmer. I grew up on a family farm, it's been the family a couple hundred years, so I don't know any better. So when I come here and I see you young kids, young adults that are excited about growing food and making that a part of your life, other than just something to eat, I just want to know how we can raise the bar for that. And the second part of my question, for some of you Buffaloites, how do you think you're doing in as far as raising, you know, you've been working in the community, do you think you're gaining ground, or is it just a constant battle to get above the baseline?
I can start with the first question, or the second question. The second question for the Buffaloites. I'm pretty hopeful. I tend to be a pretty positive person. You know, it's incremental steps. I mean, I would say, you know, I saw Diane and Dr. Roger from the Food Lab and other folks, other local leaders work for years on trying to get a food policy council, and they've got that instated. So that was a big step locally. I think that was instated in 2013. And time, you know, we can keep on working, right? So that the Food Policy Council exists, and they're working and they're trying to sort things out. And then you got all these collaborative efforts that have been, you know, coming about. So a couple of us here are part of something called the Crossroads Collective. So Alex and Dakota through MAP and Jess through Partnership for the Public Good are part of this Crossroads Collective, and really been trying to figure out how to collaborate across issues. So even though we are, MAP is food systems, MAP and African Heritage Food Co-op are food systems, these other Crossroads partners might be energy, so climate change, energy folks, I mean, we're all climate change, but like energy or transit, thank you, Jess. So like organizing across issues, and we're doing that with the, the Good Food Purchasing Program as well. So just like being really hopeful, one, because of collaboration, two, I feel like with crises comes opportunity, and our country is at a place of crises in many levels. So the opportunities of people recognizing those crises and perhaps being a little bit more open and sensitive to addressing them collectively. So anyway.
Trying to keep your head above water. I'm in a constant state of terror because I'm trying to do something that hasn't been done in the way that I'm trying to do it. So there are a lot of co-ops, there are a lot of ways that they've been done, but specifically targeting lower income folks or African American folks. There are other co-ops around the country that are doing it but haven't done it the way that we're trying to do it. And I spent the last 2 years of my life completely devoted to something that may all blow up in my face. And it's scary, but it's worth it because I truly believe in the mission. I truly believe in what I'm doing, and I pray that people around me also see that, also see my conviction and me being genuine in the effort. But sometimes you feel like you're drowning, and sometimes you feel like, why the hell? I have a law degree. I could be making money somewhere, and I'm here like just scraping by, trying to do something for the betterment of my world. And it's scary. So to answer your second question, it's good days. Some days I'm above it, some days I'm below it. For your first question, how do we get youth involved? What we're doing is just giving them opportunity, one, to see sort of what we do. Like with the co-op, we have a kitty kickstand program, a young entrepreneurial program, to help kids just see it. And we're taking over a farm, an urban farm. Well, farm is a big word. It's not a farm. It's a little bitty garden on the corner. And we have some young people involved with that, and they're growing stuff. And it's crazy because what I always tell young people is that agriculture is a $1 billion industry. It gets cut up to where the people that grow are sometimes poor. But if we could figure out a way to mainstream that and maybe cut out some of the distributors, if you don't have to do anything else, you have to eat. So if you have the ability to grow, you have a skill that people are going to need as long as they're alive. So that's kind of one of the things that we do and how we try to get young people into growing and to being in business.
Okay, so I'm gonna answer his second question. I think MAP is like getting more recognized through the mobile market more, because when people visit, they always ask like, where do you get this fruits and vegetables from, and how often do you do this? And they always ask us what our organization does and what we do there. And we get a lot of our shares from other local farms, like for example, Little Bear, Silver Creek, and Alden. And we have CSA pickup shares, and I think some people come down and visit us and ask, like, what do you guys do? Like, you know. So I think we're getting more recognized.
I'll answer this. Did you want to say anything, John? Okay. I'll answer the second question as well. I'm optimistic for food work in general. I would say because food is really connected to everything. We need it to survive. Bottom line, we need food, but food is also connected to all these other issues that, say, for example, we're working on through the Crossroads Collective. It's connected to jobs. It's connected to the environment. It's connected to, and like, you can find a connection to pretty much anything through the food system. And so you can also work to improve the food system through all of these other things, and you can use the food system to improve all of these other issues as well, if you leverage it and are intentional about it. It can also serve the opposite purpose and add to more degradation of all of these issues as well. But I am optimistic that we have such a growing awareness of kind of the struggles in the moment of crisis that we're in, I think, environmentally and socially, and food is really kind of this central point around which everyone can rally and everyone understands, and it's relatable because we rely on it. It's a cultural thing, it's a social thing as well. So I'm pretty optimistic, I would say.
Well, in answer to your first question, Robert, I would love to see some kind of partnership between NOFA and MAP to figure out how to take some of the MAP youngsters the next steps that they want to go. I mean, we have lots of connections with people who are farming.
A lot of old farmers in NOFA.
And a lot of old farmers, yeah. So how can we match people up? What kind of incubator could we create? Maybe connecting with, there are emerging land trusts as well. So find a way to put people on land that's near the cities. It's too expensive to get any other way. You're a great grant writer. Maybe we can create something together, seriously.
Yeah, we should keep talking, for sure.
Yeah, I'm hopeful as well. I would say I think that there has been such a greater demand for nutritious local food in the area, and I know we at the food bank are feeling that as well through our clients. So, you know, when we survey our clients of what do you want to see in a food pantry or what do you want to see at our mobile food pantry distributions, the want and the desire for fresh, locally grown fruits and vegetables is something that we hear all the time. You know, our clients can afford to go to the corner store and get, you know, soda or candy or whatever it is, but a lot of times due to our food system, it can be that fresh fruits and vegetables that can be tough to get a hold of, especially January, February, and March around here. So I am hopeful on especially the connections that can be made through local farmers and the food bank. We've been making a lot more connections in that realm. So I, for one, am very hopeful.
All right. I'm optimistic. Like, it's easy to get overwhelmed, and I definitely feel overwhelmed sometimes by the scope of the challenges that are facing us. And Western New York is facing a lot of challenges. Nearly half of all of our farmers work a second job just to make ends meet, and more than half are over 55. Farmers are not making enough to make this sustainable, and they are aging out. And we need to address that. And a third of the region is living on $35,000 or less a year, you know. And despite that, even though most of, you know, a third of our region is close to or below the poverty line, only 3% receive temporary assistance or relief, and only 12% are on SNAP. Even though far more people are eligible, people are not getting the support and the help that they need. And I know that it's hard for people to access food. 3/4 of adults in the Western New York region don't get the recommended amount of fruits and vegetables, and a lot of that is just a matter of access. 12% of households don't have a car and don't live in a neighborhood with a supermarket. How can people get what isn't there? And so when I look at these things and when I see the scope of these problems, I do feel overwhelmed sometimes, just knowing how big it is and how many different parts need to be addressed and how many barriers there are to addressing that. But I'm also really optimistic at the same time. You know, we've had the privilege of having a couple of youth from MAP work in the lab over the summer, and I've had the privilege of being able to work alongside of them, and their passion for this work, their passion for food justice is really inspiring to me. It's so good to see that there are young people out there who want to get involved and just need the support to do it. And it's really inspiring to see so many community partners like the African Heritage Food Co-op and MAP and NOFA, like, getting involved in this work, making these conversations happen. I know that there are people out there who are passionate and who are working hard, and that they are getting results, they are making change. And I think in a lot of ways, like you're saying, the money is there. 10% of the Western New York's GDP is food. This is a $4 billion a year industry. We need to find ways to integrate that into our economy. We need to find ways to make that money find its way back into our communities so that we're supporting the people who are working within that system. Because, you know, $4 billion a year is nothing to sneeze at. We need to find ways to integrate that into the region so that its residents are seeing the economic benefits that this system is generating. And so, I guess, long answer, I am optimistic. There's a lot of work ahead of us. These are some really big challenges, and they're very difficult to put together. It is a complicated system, but I think as long as there are these kinds of people who are doing the inspiring work that they're doing, and as long as there are the passionate youth that I have seen and I have had the privilege of working with this summer, that we're going to be okay. At least
Well, on that optimistic note, I think we're going to close out unless anyone has any other comments. Again, I just want to thank our panelists. I think this was a really